Radio for readers, Bookmark.
This is Bookmark. I'm Marc Bernier. The nation's top authors are coming up next.
Bookmark.
Now, the Democratic Republic of Congo, between hope and despair. Michael Deibert joins us on the Bookmark program. Michael, thanks for coming by to visit with us today.
Thanks very much for having me.
Is the Congo one of the great misunderstood nations of Africa because of all the changes that have happened over the last 50 to 60 years?
I would say, I think in my experience working in Congo, that the biggest misunderstanding about it is that somehow that the violence that's racked the country, particularly in the last 15 or so years, is spontaneous. I would say it's definitely not spontaneous, and it's mostly geared towards people making money.
So the country becomes victimized?
Yeah, the country, I mean, if you look at its kind of colonial history, I mean, it was first, obviously, victimized by King Leopold and then by the Belgian state. And then by Mobutu, who was a dictator for 32 years. And then after that has been, Rwanda and Uganda, both, particularly Rwanda, have sponsored a series of military proxies, particularly in the east of Congo, that have committed horrible human rights abuses as these states were looting the natural resources of Congo.
So the people don't have anything. From what I hear, it's abject poverty virtually everywhere. Your cover of your book shows a woman playing what appears to be a cello of some kind, and it's all enclosed. Tell us the significance of this.
Well, it's interesting because despite a lot of the poverty in Congo, I mean, obviously with its incredible mineral resources, it should be, I would say, by far the richest country in Africa. It should be far richer than South Africa. And in Kinshasa, there's a very great symphony orchestra. It so happens. So this
60 Minutes was there, weren't they?
I think they were probably.
Yeah.
I don't have a TV, but it seems like something.
I saw it within the last year. Amazingly talented people playing in a tent.
Yeah. Well, and the thing is for me, that photo was taken by a very great Irish photojournalist, Andrew McConnell, who I worked with in Congo for a while, and it evoked that image of somehow the human spirit straining upwards to kind of some level of grace, despite all of the problems. And I mean, one thing I was very conscious of not wanting to do is I didn't want to make the cover of the book some guy with a gun, because I figured that image is quite, well enough covered in terms of Congo and Africa in general.
How did you come to be able to cover this story? It is such a finite story.
Yeah. Well, I was living in Paris actually, and I had worked quite a bit in Haiti. The subject of my first book was on Haiti, so I was interested in the francophone world. I had spent some time in Côte d'Ivoire in West Africa, and for me, I thought Congo, along with Nigeria, was the place in Africa where all of the tragedies and the potential of Africa was most profoundly visible. So that's why I wanted to go there, and I went there for the first time at the very beginning of 2008. And it was for me, it was a very profound experience in understanding not just Africa, but global geopolitics, because, a lot of the problems in Congo can be traced back to other countries, including the United States and Europe. And, it taught me a lot, I would say, about being a journalist and about the nature of politics.
Michael, is there, as I've been led to believe, mass corruption within the government of Congo?
There's definitely mass corruption within the government of Congo, but I would say it's also corruption that the international community has not only turned a blind eye to, but applauded for many, many years. They did the same thing when Mobutu was president. Joseph Kabila, who's the president of Congo now, he's been president since 2001 after his father, Laurent Kabila, was assassinated, and he was elected in, I would say, elections that were beset by violence but generally reflective of the popular will in 2006, and then re-elected in an extremely corrupted ballot in 2011. He's surrounded by a cadre of advisors who have been linked to gross human rights abuses, illicit enrichment, who I would say don't understand the basic principles of democracy. And he has had no kind of pushback and no ill effects from the international community because of this behavior. Nor has, I would add, Paul Kagame, who's the leader of Rwanda, who has a extremely dolorous and bloody history in eastern Congo in particular, and who for many years was touted as a kind of an African success story.
What's the AIDS situation like in Congo?
It depends where you are, kind of. The eastern part of the country, where a lot of the fighting has been, has received quite a bit of attention from international NGOs and things like that. However, if you go to some other areas of the country that maybe have not had as much of a shooting war, the situation of people there can often still be quite dire. I mean, a lot of people die from things such as dysentery and malaria and things like that aren't necessarily, directly related to violence, but I suppose could be linked to violence in the sense of there hasn't been an infrastructure built in the country because of this ongoing unrest.
Well, there's also, I've heard, the corruption extends to the fact that the medicine doesn't get to the people, it gets sold on the black market. There's a large black market force in play. Is that true?
I mean, that is partially true, but what I would say, the other thing that seems to me a bit more troubling is the fact that these mineral resources, international companies such as Anvil Mining, which is based in Australia, Anglo Gold Ashanti, which is based in South Africa, First Quantum, which is a company in the United States. When one reads the reports of kind of governance groups and local human rights groups and international human rights groups, it's very hard to conclude, I think, that these international companies haven't also played a role in perpetuating this corruption in Congo through their dealings with the Congolese state.
Is there an Al-Qaeda presence in Congo?
No.
Interesting. Is it they don't see any value in being there, do you think? Or they're not interested in the minerals?
I mean, there's a Muslim presence in Congo. I would say if there's any sort of Islamist militant group, the only one I know of off the top of my head is a group called the ADF Nalu, who are Ugandan, who are based in a small area of eastern Congo. But I mean, they're not a group that would threaten the Congolese state or anything like that. I mean, they wouldn't topple the government, I'm saying.
The Russians and the Cubans had interest in Rwanda. There was training forces, there were advisors. Did they make their way to Congo?
What era are you talking about?
In the South Congo area?
No, but I mean, what era? Like what time?
I'm talking about in the 80s.
Okay. I mean, I know there was, extensive Cuban involvement, for example, in Angola. And Mobutu, when he was president, was very savvy and very successful at kind of, for a few years he would cozy up to China, and then he would cozy up to the United States, and then he was just very expert at getting money out of foreign donors, basically, by pretending that he was their friend while basically doing whatever he wanted to do. There's a very famous story from the 60s of how Che Guevara went to Eastern Congo to help a rebel group that was led by Laurent Kabila, who later became president after they overthrew Mobutu, and ended in disaster. I mean, he couldn't, he showed up with something like 30 Cuban advisors, and they completely did not mesh with the Congolese at all, particularly, I think, due to reading Che's diaries, due to the belief in witchcraft in that part of the world, which obviously was, even taking into account Santeria in Cuba, is pretty different.
Finally, what's the attitude of the countries that surround Congo? Do they want to help? Do they want to keep them at bay? Is it in their best interest for the Congo not to be fixed?
I'd say certainly the government in Kigali in Rwanda, Paul Kagame, has worked as hard as they possibly could to destabilize the Congo for 15 years. And I personally believe that the RPF, the Tutsi military dictatorship that runs Rwanda, has designs of a kind of greater Rwanda that takes chunks of eastern Congo with it. Uganda is a bit more difficult. Museveni has become the president of Uganda has become ever more eccentric as he's gotten older. He came to power in 1986 saying that the problem with African leaders was that they stayed on too long, and he's still president, and it's 2013. Dos Santos in Angola is a bit more complicated. I mean, I think he kind of has a desire to have a bit of stability in Congo, but I think he sees that stability as coming through an authoritarian government that Kabila has now.
Michael Deibert, the author of The Democratic Republic of Congo, Between Hope and Despair, our guest today on Bookmark. Great to see you, Michael. Thanks for coming by.
Thank you very much.
That's Bookmark for this week. If you have comments or thoughts on future authors, send an email to us at our website, bookmark.us. That's our broadcast for today. Thanks for watching.